Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Barbara Galland, tākou inga. Thank you. Welcome everybody to this afternoon's session. So we've got about 6 speakers from the University of Otago in Dunedin and also one from Wellington as well. So we're going to hear a lot of research around nutrition, obesity and sleep. So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who is Dave Grattan. So Dave's a professor from the Department of Anatomy, and he heads the Grattan lab, which is actually part of the Centre for Neuroendocrinology. And they're actually celebrating 20 years of research as well this year, and I think the celebrations are next week. So today he's going to tell us about some of the mechanisms that can impact obesity and on the issues of obesity. So thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Barbara. Kia ora koutou. Yeah, it's a real pleasure for me to be invited to speak here. As Barbara mentioned, I'm a neuroscientist, a neuroendocrinologist, and my real passion is understanding how our hormones influence the brain and how the brain influences our endocrine system. And I guess I got involved in the EDOR Diabetes and Research Centre actually quite a long time ago because of a shift in my emphasis, I guess, or really an opportunity when leptin was discovered. So almost 30 years, a little bit of poetic license there. Next year will be the 30th anniversary of the discovery of the hormone leptin. I started my job at the University of Otago in 1995 as a neuroendocrinologist. And so for me, it was incredibly exciting to have a new hormone discovered that acted in the brain and changed our behavior. And you know, so I had an interest in this from an educational perspective of passing that on to my students. My interests, as I'll talk a little bit later, were really in the area of hormonal changes in the brain in pregnancy. But this came along and really caught my attention. And I like to think that the kind of 20 years of research into obesity and diabetes in the EDOR Centre has gone in parallel to an unbelievable explosion in our understanding in how the brain controls appetite, controls glucose homeostasis, controls, you know, basically what we do in terms of our body weight. And so I've almost felt my role in the centre has been to just be a little bit of a flea in the ear of the people, the public health researchers, the clinicians, and just remind them we need to also, you know, all these wonderful interventions and diets and other ways, these really, really important things to treat these conditions, we have to remember that these are biological conditions and everyone's individual biology is different and there are powerful mechanisms at play. So that's kind of what I've been you know, involved in the centre and I've seen my role to do. So I actually selected this this diagram because it came out in 2003, about the same time as the EDOR Centre started, the EDOR Research Centre started. And it kind of illustrates to me this concept that body weight is controlled by a homeostatic mechanism in the brain. We have systems that drive appetite, we have systems that stop appetite, it changes your food intake, that influences your energy balance. Not sure if I want to use this pointer or not, but yeah, maybe not. That influences your energy balance and adjusts how much food you eat to match your energy expenditure. And this is the sort of work we were doing at the time. This is the picture on the right is just a picture of a rat brain that we've injected with leptin, and every single one of those black dots is a neuron that has responded to leptin with phosphorylation of a protein. So it's showing that the hormone in the body is acting very rapidly in the brain to influence what's going on. And I think, you know, these brain areas now, 20 years later, we know the cell types involved, we know how they respond to these signals, we know how they're connected to other things. There's been an incredible explosion in parallel with the work on body weight regulation, there's been incredible advances in tools in neuroscience. We can specifically activate these cells, we can turn them off. It's just an amazing catalogue of work that has been done over these past 20 years that have enabled us to understand that, the role of biology in driving food intake and adjusting body weight. I did want to focus on this energy expenditure thing because when I started thinking about this, probably like almost everyone else, I thought about body weight as regulated by food intake. Because we're conscious of food intake, right? We make decisions about what we eat and how much we eat, and we feel like we're in control. But actually, the energy expenditure side of the equation is really important as well. When you think about energy expenditure, you probably think about going for a walk or going to the gym with 30 minutes of steps or whatever. But actually, the research, this is a really nice review that's actually just published this year, characterizing total energy expenditure in the body. And this is just a figure from their work. And all I really wanted to highlight on here is that this side of the graph is just how energy expenditure is affected by a wide range of things in the body. But if you just look at total energy expenditure, the red box there is the physical activity you think of when you think of physical activity. The rest of what your body spends in a day, thermoregulation, body maintenance, growth and reproduction, just basically your cells being alive, something like 70% of your energy expenditure is just you staying alive. The stuff you're aware of, the conscious stuff, is the 30%. And what that means is if you decide, I'm going to go for a run or go to the gym, you're manipulating that 30%, but your body has a whole large capacity to compensate for that or adjust for other things that are going on. And much of that you're not aware of. You're completely unconscious of it. So you can't control it. It's out of your control. That's biology. So we end up thinking about body weight as a physiologically controlled variable. And this is kind of interesting. I was thinking of, I met Mike Lean probably 15 years ago, and I just met him today on the lawn outside. He looks exactly the same as he did back then, a little bit grayer maybe, but exactly the same. And he probably looked at me and said, "Oh, Dave, you got a bit fat." But actually, I'm pretty much the same as I was 15 years ago. So, I often look at people like Mike and I think, what are they doing that I'm not doing to maintain my body weight? And I have to sort of remind myself about the science that actually, even me as a person with obesity, is phenomenally good at maintaining my body weight. My body weight hasn't really changed for 10 years. So I have a relatively stable body weight. And what that means is that the amount of food I eat almost exactly matches the energy I expend in a day to be stable. And you've probably seen this before, but I just want to remind people of the numbers involved here, that we eat roughly 1 million calories a year. To gain a kilogram has been estimated to only take about 6,000 calories. So for my body weight to stay flat, I have to make sure that I don't increase or decrease my energy expenditure by more than a few thousand calories. That's about a 0.6% error over the course of a year. I have to be 99-point-something% accurate. I don't know about you guys, I've never achieved 99% in anything. Except this. It equates to 16 calories a day, and to put that in, like lunch terms, that's a quarter of an apple. So those of you who, saw those nice sort of steak rolls and said, well, actually I might have one of those, but you might have accounted for the fact that, if you look on the other side of the equation, 4 minutes of walking. If you parked on the other side, the main campus, and you walked over here, it's a 10-minute walk, you could afford to have an extra half apple today. Like, nobody can do that sort of thing consciously. You can't keep a record of every step you take compared to every bite you take. And lucky for you, you don't have to, because your brain is doing that for you. The brain is doing this all the time at 99% accuracy in almost all of us. But that's biology, and we can't really change it. And for some people, it's going to be different from other people. So as I say, I came into this, actually, my real interest is in the control of how pregnancy hormones affect the brain. And one of the things that we were really interested in is the fact that during pregnancy, pregnant females eat more. And you might think, well, that's just because they've got more metabolic load. You know, they've got growing a baby, they've got mammary glands to grow, milk to produce. But actually, in almost all species, they gain fat. So what that means is that whatever that homeostatic mechanism is that I've just described as 99% accurate, in pregnancy, it changes and allows for weight gain. And that's thought to be an adaptive change because lactation is going to be demanding. So mums are preparing for that unconsciously, knowing it's going to happen. And again, that's biology doing that. We've shown that there are complete changes to responses to leptin in the brain. Where non-pregnant females, just like males, if you give them leptin, they'll suppress their food intake. That doesn't happen in pregnancy. They just completely ignore it. So the brain becomes resistant to leptin. It also becomes resistant to insulin. So the actions of those hormones that are normally working don't work. And again, that's a biological response. So it just sort of highlights that we have a complex homeostatic system and it can change to meet different conditions. It's biology. The bottom line there, the reduced physical activity, that was completely unexpected when we saw that. We were actually doing an experiment. This is work from Sharon Laderman. We were doing an experiment where we had animals in a metabolic cage and we wanted to measure their food intake and various other things about metabolism. And we just happened to have a running wheel in the cage and we didn't really even think about it. It was just there as part of the kit. And what we found is that first things, mice love to run. If you live in a cage and you've got nothing else to do, you run on a running wheel. These are actual distances, kilometers per day. 7, you imagine a little mouse wheels? Certainly more kilometers than I'm running a day. That's what they do every day. Every fourth day they run a bit more. What happens every 4 days in a mouse? You probably don't really think about this a lot. That's ovulation. Every cycle they run a bit more. As soon as they get pregnant, they halve their running, and then right through pregnancy it goes down to nothing, sits at nothing through lactation, and then as soon as you take the pups away, they're back running again. And we were able to show, so this is not a conscious decision that they've made. Nobody read a book and said, oh, you shouldn't do as much exercise, or this is just their hormones telling them to do this. And we've shown that actually this is the hormone prolactin, which is thought of as a milk hormone, acts in the brain, changes their behavior. So just, reinforcing the fact that there is a lot of dynamics at play here. I just saw this in Nature today. It came out this week. And I kind of feel like this makes me in some sort of elite now because apparently only about 0.5 of neuroscience research is looking at women's health. And that's what we do, so. We also know that there's a strong genetic component, and Mike referred to that in his talk, and this is the sort of work that's been shown to show that body type is really, really heritable. And I think I can assume that you will accept that there's a certain amount of heritability in weight. So we don't really need to think about whether it's involved, just what genes are involved. And this sort of work has been now going on again in the 20 years that we've been going as a centre. The first gene was identified in 2007. This is, one of many genes having a small effect size. By 2010, by studying thousands more individuals, we've identified 18 more genes. This is a review that's just come out a couple of years ago from Giles Yeo. And I'm just going to blow up the right-hand side of that. And you can start to see that what's happening here is that we started off identifying 1 or 10 or 20 genes. And in the last few years with technology, there's been an explosion of discovery. And we now know probably over 1,000 genes that have been identified to be involved somehow in obesity-related phenotypes. I did want to just highlight on this slide, you can see the blue color. All of this work is done in Europeans, USA, Europe. And, just recently, the first identification of a gene that's unique to Pacific peoples was identified. And this was an American group that studied this in Samoans and identified a gene. This gene variant has a much bigger effect than any other variant that's ever been discovered before. And it's only found in people from the Pacific. Tony Merriman's group, when he was here at Otago, showed that this gene is found in all of the Pacific populations, including Maori, at relatively high levels. About 20 to 30% of the population carries this variant. So it just sort of highlights we need to be doing work in New Zealand, because the rest of the world's not going to find this stuff. They're not going to understand this stuff because there just aren't enough Maoris in the rest of the world to be part of these study populations. So again, sort of reinforcing the fact that we need to be doing some work here. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I had a brief musical interlude here. I can't quite get it started. The mouse, where is the mouse? Over there? Yeah, okay, well, let's pull that. Here it is here. You all know this song. Really great lyrics. Times have changed, now the poor get fat. This song was written in 1974. This is 50 years ago. We've known that times have changed. And so many people say to me when I talk about genetics and biology, things have changed. Clearly the obesity epidemic has nothing to do with the stuff you work on. Genetics, biology hasn't changed. Times have changed. The environment has changed. The food environment has changed. The social environment has changed. But that's not how genetics works, right? Genetics works by judging how an individual responds to the environment they live in. And the changing environment that we are now in has affected some of us more than others. So it's a gene-environment interaction. And I just wanted to show one study that, just to give you an illustration of the sort of work we do in my lab, that kind of illustrates this point. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to talk really briefly. This is an experiment that we're doing, and you don't need to know anything about it. It highlights the sort of thing we're doing. We've got a various genetic manipulation where we're knocking out one protein in one small part of the brain. The protein is beta-catenin, and we've knocked it out, and you can see, hopefully, you can be convinced down here that this is normal levels of beta-catenin in the brain. Here's a bit that we've wiped it out in, and just wiping out that little bit of beta-catenin, I won't tell you why we're doing it, because it would take too long. At the end of the day, it did nothing if the animals were on a normal diet. So this is the body weight. You can see we've monitored it for a number of days. What we've done is change the environment on these mice and put them on a high-fat diet. And this is what happens. So basically, the knockout animals on the high-fat diet gained twice as much weight as all of the animals got fat on the high-fat diet, as you might expect. But the ones without beta-catenin in their hypothalamus got twice as fat. And this was really dramatic, and it happened really quickly, as the graph on the right shows. So all I really want to highlight about that is that these are mice in a cage in exactly the same environment. The only thing different about them is we've slightly tweaked their biology. And those sort of tweaks in biology are amongst us. In this room, we've all got different tweaks in our biology. Every one of us is different. And some of those small tweaks can have effects. And they'll affect how you respond to the environment, they'll affect how you respond to diet, they'll affect how you respond to all sorts of things. So we just need to keep that in mind when we're dealing with this problem, which, as we've all highlighted, is a really significant one. So I'll just leave it by thanking the people that have worked with me on that topic.